You didn't ask for help. Not because no one was there, because something in you decided before you even reached out that it was better this way. In this video, we're going to look at 5 psychological traits that define people who habitually figure things out alone. We'll look at where this pattern comes from, what it costs you without you realizing, and, critically, when it becomes a strength rather than a defense mechanism. By the time we reach point 4, you'll understand why the most self-sufficient people are often the ones carrying the most invisible weight. And there's one thing I'll say at the end of this video that completely reframes what being independent actually means. This isn't about valorizing solitude or criticizing it. A 2021 study from University College London found that habitual self-reliance, particularly the avoidance of social support, is one of the strongest predictors of chronic low-level stress in adults under 40. That finding matters because most people who figure things out alone don't feel stressed, they feel capable. Those are not always the same thing. Point 1. The early architect. It's a Saturday afternoon in a semi-detached somewhere in the Midlands. A 10-year-old has a problem with their homework. They sit with it for 40 minutes before their parent walks past the door. They don't call out. That moment, quiet, unremarkable, is where a great deal of this begins. Psychologists call this the development of an autonomous coping style, a learned preference for solving problems without external input. It doesn't start with strength. It starts with an early environment where asking felt costly, too disruptive, too risky, or simply met with indifference. Researcher John Bowlby's attachment theory, developed at the Tavistock Institute in London, identifies this as a feature of avoidant attachment, where children learn that emotional and practical needs are best managed internally. In adult life, this shows up as a reflexive preference. You reach for Google before you ring a friend. You solve it before you name it. It feels natural. It is natural by now. But natural isn't the same as chosen, which raises the question, if this pattern was built without your consent, what else was built alongside it? Think about the last time you had a problem. Who was the first person you told? If no one comes to mind immediately, that's worth sitting with. Point 2. The Competence Trap. It's 9:15 on a Wednesday morning in a glass-fronted office somewhere near Liverpool Street. Everyone else is in a stand-up meeting. You stayed at your desk. You sorted the problem before the meeting started. No one knows. You don't mention it. This is what psychologists call self-efficacy overextension, a condition where high competence quietly expands into the belief that you are always the most reliable person in any situation, including situations involving your own well-being. Albert Bandura, whose self-efficacy research remains foundational across British and global psychology curricula, identified that high self-efficacy is enormously adaptive, right up to the point where it becomes a barrier to receiving support. The trap is elegant. You are genuinely good at solving things, so you solve more things, alone. And with each solved problem, the belief reinforces, I don't need help. According to the Mental Health Foundation's 2022 UK report, men aged 18 to 34 are significantly less likely to seek professional support, not because they lack access, but because self-sufficiency has been coded as identity. The cost isn't incompetence, it's isolation dressed up as capability. And that isolation has a very specific texture, which brings us to point 3. If you're still here, here's the part most people miss entirely. The next point isn't about weakness, it's about what self-sufficiency protects you from and why that protection may no longer serve you. Point 3. The vulnerability tax. You've been in a GP waiting room. You know the form, the one that asks how you've been feeling. You tick the boxes that get you out fastest. Not dishonestly, you just summarize. That is not a quirk. That is the vulnerability tax in operation. The vulnerability tax is the psychological cost people pay for maintaining the appearance and reality of self-sufficiency. It works like this. Every time you choose not to disclose, not to ask, not to show the real state of things, you save short-term social capital and spend long-term emotional energy. Research published in the Lancet Psychiatry in 2020 found that chronic non-disclosure of emotional difficulty was associated with significantly elevated cortisol levels, meaning the body is paying for what the mind won't say aloud. This isn't metaphorical. Unexpressed difficulty doesn't stay in the mind. It moves into the body, into sleep, into tension that never quite resolves. The people who figure things out alone often describe feeling fine whilst carrying a physiological load that tells a different story. And yet, there's a reason they keep paying this tax, which is what point 4 is about. What I'm about to say in point 4 completely reframes why self-sufficient people often feel so deeply misunderstood and why that misunderstanding is not an accident. Point 4. The invisible contract. You're at a birthday do in someone's flat in Peckham. The music's too loud, everyone's talking, you're having a perfectly good time, but you're also quietly watching the room, filing things, understanding people, and feeling just slightly like you're on the other side of the glass. This feeling has a name: interpersonal hypervigilance. People who habitually self-rely don't just solve problems alone. They become exceptional at reading other people, anticipating needs, and detecting dynamics before anyone names them. A 2019 study from the University of Edinburgh found that individuals with avoidant attachment histories scored significantly higher on social perceptual accuracy. They were better at reading emotional cues than their securely attached peers. Here is the invisible contract. The self-sufficient person sees more, asks for less, and wonders why no one sees them back. They became expert observers of others precisely because, early on, reading the room was safer than being in it. This is why self-sufficient people so often feel misunderstood. It is not that people lack the desire to see them. It is that they have become extraordinarily practiced at not being seen. The independence is real, the invisibility is its shadow. If you're still watching, the final point is the one that changes how you use everything we've covered. Point 5. The recalibration. It's Sunday morning. You're at the kitchen table with someone you trust. And instead of saying, "I'm fine, just tired," you say the actual thing. It comes out a bit wrong, clunky, but it comes out. That moment, unremarkable from the outside, is a recalibration. Recalibration is not the abandonment of self-sufficiency. It is the decision to apply your considerable problem-solving capacity to the question of when to stop solving alone. Psychologist Kristen Neff, whose self-compassion research is widely cited across UK clinical psychology programs, distinguishes between autonomous resilience, healthy independence, and defended resilience, which is self-sufficiency used as a shield. Defended resilience keeps you functional. It does not keep you whole. The NHS's own guidelines on stress and emotional well-being explicitly name social connection, not coping strategies, as the primary protective factor against long-term mental health deterioration. The recalibration is not weakness. It is the application of the same intelligence you've always used, just aimed inward and outward simultaneously. You were always capable of figuring things out. The question was never whether you could. The question is, what are you choosing not to receive? At the start of this video, I said you didn't ask for help because something in you decided it was better this way. Here's the part I held back. That something isn't a character flaw. It's an intelligence that once kept you safe. The person who figures things out alone learned very early that they were reliable, often because someone else wasn't. That reliability became an identity. The identity became a reflex. The reflex became a life. And what the University of Edinburgh research quietly confirms is this: those same people are often the ones who see everyone else most clearly. They just stopped believing anyone would return the favor. Being self-sufficient was never the problem. Believing you had to be, that's what this video was really about. If this shifted something in how you see yourself or someone you know, the next video on "Do you see what others don't? If so, here's why" goes even further into the psychology behind this. It's the one most people message me about. And before you go, I want to ask you something specific. Of the 5 patterns we covered today, the early architect, the competence trap, the vulnerability tax, the invisible contract, or the recalibration, which one felt most like you? Drop the number below. I read every single one.